The hangar deck of the USS Valor roared with the noise of engines, boots, and tension. It was dawn in the Arabian Sea, 30 nautical miles from the coast, and the air shimmered with salt, heat, and the metallic tang of jet fuel. Rows of fighter jets gleamed beneath the rising sun, their wings folded like sleeping hawks waiting to strike. Officers hurried between them, clipboards in hand, shouting coordinates and call signs. Among them stood Lieutenant Kara Hultgreen, her flight helmet tucked beneath her arm, her eyes sharp and unyielding. She was the youngest F-14 Tomcat pilot aboard the carrier and one of the few women trusted to lead an active combat wing. For most, she was known simply by her call sign, Legend. The name had started as a joke among her peers after a daring night rescue over hostile territory 2 years earlier. But as she walked the deck that morning, she carried it with quiet pride. Every mission, every scar, every friend she'd lost, they were the ink that had written that name into her bones. But not everyone aboard the Valor shared that respect. In the operations briefing room, a dozen high-ranking officers gathered around a digital map glowing with red targets. At the center stood Admiral Pierce, a man whose medals were polished brighter than his conscience. His reputation was built on control and appearances, and he didn't like what Kara represented: change, equality, and proof that courage wore no single face. When Kara entered the room, conversations slowed. She stood tall, her posture crisp, uniform immaculate. The Admiral's cold eyes flicked toward her. "So this is the so-called legend," he said, voice dripping with mockery. "The one who's apparently rewriting Navy tradition." The room went silent. Kara met his gaze, refusing to flinch. "Lieutenant Kara Hultgreen reporting as ordered, sir." The Admiral smirked. "I've reviewed your file. Funny thing, that call sign of yours doesn't appear in any official record. Almost like someone's been writing their own mythology." A few officers chuckled under their breath. Kara didn't move. She'd been here before. Different rooms, different uniforms, same tone. She'd fought harder for her place in the cockpit than most of them ever had for their medals. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" she asked. Pierce leaned back, smug. "By all means, enlighten us." Kara's voice was steady. "The name wasn't given by command. It was earned by the people who came home because of what I did. If that's a problem, you can call me by my rank." The room went quiet again, the air thick with unspoken challenge. Colonel Eileen Collins, seated near the map, glanced up from her notes. A trailblazer herself, the first female shuttle commander, she gave Kara a subtle nod of respect. Pierce dismissed the exchange with a wave of his hand. "Save the speeches, Lieutenant. You'll be flying support for Colonel Glenn's transport convoy today. Routine escort, nothing heroic." Kara bit back a reply. She knew better than to argue with rank, especially one trying to provoke her. But something in her gut stirred. A sharp instinct honed by too many missions gone sideways. Routine was a word that rarely belonged anywhere near a war zone. As the briefing ended, Kara lingered by the window overlooking the deck. Her reflection stared back at her, steady, composed, but restless. Outside, her Tomcat waited, wings catching the morning light like a silent promise. Colonel Collins approached quietly. "You handled that well," she said. "Pierce still thinks courage is a man's currency." Kara gave a small smile. "Then he's never been in a storm with a woman at the controls." The colonel chuckled softly. "Something tells me he's about to learn." Kara looked out again toward the horizon, where a thin line of smoke rose far beyond what the Admiral's maps showed. Something was moving out there, something big, hidden beneath the illusion of routine orders, and though she didn't know it yet, before the sun would set, every officer aboard the Valor, including Admiral Pierce, would understand why the world called her legend. The sea had turned from calm to chaos in a single hour. What began as a routine escort mission had become a storm of fire and confusion. Lieutenant Kara Hultgreen's Tomcat sliced through the thick smoke above the Gulf, her headset alive with frantic voices. The transport carrying Colonel John Glenn and wounded soldiers had gone silent. The radar showed a cluster of unidentified drones closing fast. Too fast. "Command, this is Valor 2-1, confirming multiple bogies inbound. No friendly IF." Kara's voice was steady, but her pulse was racing. She could hear the panic in the other pilots. A drone swarm meant precision, no mercy, and no time. On the carrier, Admiral Pierce barked orders through the comms, trying to re-establish control. "All wings, form defensive perimeter. No one engages without my authorization." Kara scanned the radar. The convoy was minutes from being overrun. "Sir, if we wait, they'll be gone." "Lieutenant, that's an order," Pierce snapped. Static filled the line. Then screams. The first drone volley struck the lead escort jet, sending it spiraling into the ocean in a burst of flame. Kara's gut clenched. That was Lieutenant Hayes, her wing partner, her friend. Her voice had cut off mid-breath. Something in Kara hardened. She switched frequencies to the internal squadron channel. "All units, on me! Defensive Delta. We intercept at Vector 321. Ma'am, command says hold position," one pilot protested. "Command isn't the one out here bleeding," she said quietly. "Follow me or fall back. Your choice." Without waiting, she rolled her Tomcat into a dive, throttles full forward. The jet screamed through the sky, cutting a path toward the convoy. The sea flashed below like shards of glass. Around her, a few loyal wingmen followed, younger pilots who'd seen her in action before and trusted instinct over rank. The drones swarmed like a black cloud, weaving through missile fire with machine precision. Kara fired chaff, juked left, and rolled through a burst of cannon tracers. The impact rattled her cockpit, alarms flashing red. She ignored them. Her HUD locked onto one target, a drone heading straight for the wounded transport. "Missile away," she called, squeezing the trigger. The explosion lit the sky, debris scattering like fireworks. But there were too many. For every drone destroyed, 2 more appeared. Colonel Collins's voice crackled through. "Kara, we've got visual from satellite feed. The drones are coordinated from a control ship." "Coordinates transmitting now!" The data pinged on her screen. A stealth vessel 20 miles out, invisible to radar, hidden in the fog. That was the real enemy. Kara adjusted her course. "Copy that. I'm going after the source." Pierce's voice roared through the channel. "Negative. You'll break formation. Then court-martial me later," Kara shot back. "I'm saving lives now." She accelerated, pushing the Tomcat beyond safety limits. Her jet shook violently, warning lights screaming. The sea blurred beneath her, the horizon fading into haze. At last, the outline of the enemy vessel emerged, sleek, black, unmarked. She dropped altitude and armed her last 2 missiles. Her targeting system flickered, jammed. The ship was broadcasting a scrambling signal. Her radar blinked out completely. She was flying blind. Then in the static, a familiar voice came through. Colonel Glenn himself, hoarse but alive. "Lieutenant, if you can hear me, do what you have to. Don't let them get through." Kara's throat tightened. The hero of 2 wars was trusting her judgment. No hesitation, no fear. Just mission. She dropped low, skimmed the waves, and cut her radio to avoid detection. The enemy ship's turrets tracked her position too late. She released both missiles manually, using only instinct and experience. The old trick her father had taught her under the sound of carrier engines years ago. The sky erupted. The control ship's deck tore open in a flash of white fire. Drone signals across the radar blinked out one by one. Her Tomcat lurched from the shockwave, metal groaning. A wing panel tore loose, alarms howled, and smoke filled the cockpit. She gritted her teeth and fought the stick, struggling to keep the jet level. "Mayday! Valor 2-1, I'm hit!" The voice on the carrier was silent for a long beat. Then, through static, Admiral Pierce whispered, barely audible, "Bring her home, legend." The jet limped back toward the horizon, flames trailing behind like a comet. Kara's hands trembled, but her eyes stayed fixed on the carrier lights growing larger in the distance. She'd done it, but the cost was still unfolding. And deep down, she knew this fight wasn't over yet. The flight deck of the USS Valor was chaos, wrapped in silence. Crew members rushed across the steel surface as the crippled F-14 approached from the horizon, its right wing half shattered, one engine burning. Every eye turned skyward. The jet was coming in too fast, the landing gear barely functioning, black smoke streaming behind it like a war-torn banner. Admiral Pierce stood at the command rail, his face pale. His earlier arrogance was gone, replaced by something raw, fear and disbelief. The pilot he had mocked, the one he'd tried to humiliate, was now the only reason the carrier and its convoy still existed. "Arresting cables ready," shouted the deck officer. "Emergency crews in position." The Tomcat's radio crackled with static. Kara's voice came through, weak but steady. "Valor, this is 2-1. "I'm coming in hot." "Copy that, 2-1, came the reply. "You're clear to land." "We've got you." For a breathless moment, the carrier seemed to hold still. The jet descended, skidding across the deck, sparks showering like falling stars. The hook caught the third cable, snapping taut. The F-14 lurched forward, then stopped, just meters from the edge. Smoke billowed, fire alarms screamed. But the jet had made it home. When the canopy opened, Kara was slumped in the seat, helmet cracked, face streaked with sweat and ash. The crew surrounded her instantly. Medics helped her out, their hands careful, their eyes full of awe. The moment her boots touched the deck, every sailor nearby froze. And then, one by one, they saluted. From the bridge, Admiral Pierce descended the metal stairs in silence. The crew parted for him as he approached her. Kara straightened, still breathing hard, one hand resting against the jet as if to steady herself. Her uniform was torn, her flight patch burned, but her eyes were unbroken, calm, defiant, alive. Pierce stopped a few feet away. His voice, once sharp with pride, now trembled. "Lieutenant, I was wrong." She met his gaze but said nothing. Around them, the sound of helicopters faded, the sea wind carrying only the hiss of cooling metal. Pierce removed his cap, his throat tight. "I mocked your call sign. I thought it was fiction." But after today, he glanced toward the horizon, where the last plume of smoke from the destroyed enemy ship still rose into the sky. "You've made sure the word legend means something real." Kara finally spoke, voice quiet but strong. "It was never about the name, sir. It was about the people who believed I could live up to it." The Admiral nodded, eyes lowered. "And you did." Colonel Eileen Collins stepped forward, placing a hand on Kara's shoulder. "The convoy's safe. Colonel Glenn wanted me to tell you he owes you his life." "We all do." Kara gave a faint smile. "Then that makes us even. He's the reason I ever took the sky in the first place." Later that night, as the ship sailed under a blood-orange sunset, the crew gathered on deck for a quiet moment of reflection. The wreckage of Kara's Tomcat had been secured below for repairs, its tail marked with a single word: legend. The name that once drew laughter now carried reverence. It would become a code of honor whispered among future pilots. The courage to act when orders failed, to trust instinct when everything else broke apart. Admiral Pierce stood at the bridge window, watching the ocean roll beneath the hull. He'd spent decades enforcing rules, commanding fleets, measuring valor by rank and ribbons. But that day, one young woman had rewritten his understanding of what leadership meant. Down on the flight deck, Kara gazed at the stars just beginning to pierce the dark. Her arms were bandaged, her hair still streaked with soot. Yet in her expression was peace. The quiet kind earned only by those who've walked through fire and come out carrying others. When Colonel Collins joined her, Kara said softly, "They'll forget my name one day." "They always do," Collins smiled. "Maybe, but they'll never forget what you stood for." As the carrier moved steadily into the night, the hum of its engines mixed with the low chorus of the waves. And somewhere in that vast, endless ocean sky, the call sign legend lived on. Not as a title, not as glory, but as proof that true courage needs no introduction.